Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
If you're here for Youth Rehabilitation Services Workgroup, you're in the right place. Liz, I will bump it over to you.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Suki. So I'm Liz Park. I'm the co-chair of the Youth Rehabilitation Services Workgroup, and Erin Betzinger, who's also on the call, is my co-chair. But I'm going to be moderating the panel today. So we want to welcome our representatives from the local management board. I'm just going to give you all a moment to introduce yourselves and what jurisdiction your local management board is serving, and then maybe just a brief talk on the work your local management board does, and then we're going to do a slide presentation to get everybody oriented to the local management boards. But I just wanted to give you each a chance to introduce yourself first.
Okay.
Pam, do you want to go first? Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Pam Brown, and I am the director here at the Partnership for Children, Youth and Families. We are the Anne Arundel County Local Management Board. We are a big local management board. We have 49 staff members. Within the county, we have both a planning function and a direct service function. Our planning is around community needs assessments, asset mapping, community planning. Our direct service is around juvenile services, work with young people and with families related to prevention of homelessness, basic needs. We have a youth services division. We have a youth services director. Within that, we do mental health mentoring, DJS mentoring, community conferencing, peer navigation, and anything else that comes along our way. So that is us. I will hand over to Nancy.
Thank you, Pam. So just to get to spotlight the diversity in local management boards, I'm Nancy Andrew, the director of Talbot Family Network. We're in Talbot County on the Eastern Shore as the local management board, and we are a staff of one. We have contract support for a couple other roles, but are small and mighty. We, similar to Pam though, serve both some direct function and coordinating function. So we are, we'll be starting as a backbone organization for a collective impact initiative around poverty, and really do some work to build the collaboration muscle in our community among our partners, working on being a more data-informed community, and also working on prioritizing participatory action approaches. And under direct service, we do a lot of work in this sector around racial equity with our community partners, trying to build capacity there, and then fund some other initiatives in our county, including some after-school programming and home visitation services. So I will pass it over to Renee.
Hi, I'm Renee Isley. I am the executive director of the local management board in Allegheny County in the Western Maryland section. We are a nonprofit local management board. We are not affiliated with local or state government. We have a staff of 6, and that is only because we have, over the last 2 years, received some other grants that I was able to hire some additional staff. I have 2 part-time and 3 full-time. No, actually 3 part-time, 2 full-time, sorry, and myself. And we are very involved with the Enough Act, and we have 2 census tracts in Allegheny County that have really taken a lot of my time, but we also have Family Navigation, which is our direct service, and of course the local care team. And is Leisha on?
I don't see her.
I don't see her either, which
It's a little odd.
Yes.
Okay, well, if she joins us, maybe she's just running a few minutes late, or people have tech issues and internet issues. So if she joins us, then we'll let her introduce herself. What can you just say which jurisdiction she is from, just so folks will?
Frederick.
Okay, great. All right, great. And then, and I'm not sure which of you was going to, was it you, Nancy, was going to do the PowerPoint? So that would be great. So if you want to share that with everyone and just give us a quick overview of local management boards.
Thank you. We thought it would be good to just table set and make sure everybody in the space had a base understanding of local management boards. I invite, of course, my partners here to chime in on anything. So first off, please keep in mind that local management boards are unique to the state of Maryland. And this first slide shows you our basic structure. So starting at the top with the governor, each governor's administration sets the vision and the broad goals that ultimately define our work. Then from there, the Children's Cabinet determines the strategies and the results that we're working towards. The Governor's Office for Children is where we are administratively homed, and they are our admin coordination and support. They provide some background with research and measurement. And then local management boards you'll find at your most grassroots-based community level. So we're working directly with our communities and among our communities on the ground. There is a local management board in every county in Maryland, plus Baltimore City. Although I think you heard already from our introductions, the diversity among us. So that is really intentional in how local management boards were created. While we get this direction from the state, we have local decision-making authority that is guided by our own local data and our partnership and collaboration with others in our community. So we're a neutral convener for local voice. We do some important work around needs assessments, finding gaps, and monitoring certain data for our jurisdictions. Just to re-emphasize that the network of support and strength that we are across the state of Maryland, while we may take different shapes and forms, some of us are formally part of government, some quasi-government, and some of us are nonprofits. We are a network of all these different organizations, which gives us some power statewide. Just a little bit about what makes local management boards both unique and effective. We exist by statute, and part of our mandate is to ensure that there's coordination among local agencies. I think we all know the tendency that we may have as humans and organizations to work in silos. So local management boards really have that muscle to help build that collaboration across our community. We are a neutral convener, bringing together diverse voices. We are accountable for results through our statewide report card for child well-being with a variety of performance measures around that. We provide leadership to coordinate child-serving agencies and partners to achieve collective impact. So really working as a system of the whole. We have dedicated staff support. While obviously that staff support, the capacity of the staff varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, there is at least staff support there to keep our work going and be consistent over time, even if other factors around us change. And most importantly, we work locally on the ground in the communities where you find us. Something that we've really been talking a lot about as an association of local management boards statewide is our desire to see some of the largest statewide initiatives really brought together, where we're seeing the overlap in our own work. And just like to spotlight this, obviously being homed under the Governor's Office for Children, the Enough Act, which is an administrative-wide initiative for the Moore administration, is a big focus of our work. Poverty has, prior to the Enough Act, was a big part of the work in our communities. We also are seeing a lot of intersectionality with Blueprint and the goals there, and as well with the hub and spoke model through the Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports. My next couple slides are about LCTs, our local care teams, but I just want to pause and see if any of my LNB partners want to add anything to what I've said so far.
No, you did it beautifully. Thank you, Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you did a great job. I just want to emphasize one thing is we do results-based accountability. Our numbers may not be extraordinary, but we are making a difference in our community with our families. And that is what the governor's office has us focus on. And it's not just getting numbers. It is making a difference in our communities. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. So I think what you're saying, Renee, is really making a difference for the populations that need it the most. Mm-hmm. Thanks. So that's really a nice segue to make sure that you are aware of local care teams. So just as there's a local management board in every county, we each are the administrative home to a local care team or an LCT, and every LCT has a coordinator. So just a few things to keep in mind about our local care teams. They are a voluntary space. While a family can self-refer to the local care team, any agency partner can refer someone to the local care team. It is voluntary. So families that show up at our local care teams tend to have children in their homes with intensive needs, and they need help identifying resources, either additional resources or coordinating the resources that are already in place. So we are a multi-agency problem-solving body. Interagency discussions are really the heart of what happened at a local care team meeting. We try to problem solve with a family and address systemic needs. During a local care team meeting, a family and a child may be referred to wraparound services with any number of our community partners or Wraparound Maryland, and other local available resources in the community. So a big part of what the local care team is doing is just also having a pulse on what services are available so that we can help families most in need who are often we're seeing them in a time of crisis, access those services in the least restrictive way possible. We do also, each local care team during the year provides some training and support to its partners to help make sure that they have the best practices that they need to impact the population being served. We'll share resources with local agencies and other local care teams. So just as our local management boards meet statewide, so do our local care team coordinators. And then when there's a voluntary placement agreement, those are brought before the local before the local care team. Just to give you a sense of who serves on the local care team by statute, as I said, these are multi-agency problem-solving bodies. So Department of Juvenile Services, DDA, et cetera. You can read the list there of who serves. There are statutory members, and then each jurisdiction can add additional members. I think it's fair to say across the state with our local care teams, we are all seeing cases show up earlier, so younger and younger children and more complex problems for the families that we're encountering. I think also I could characterize to say we're often seeing families either when a crisis has started and they're unsure what services to access, or when a family is multi-agency involved and they need help with the coordination of those services, which can, as we all know, be somewhat overwhelming, especially as you first step into it. That's all I have just for those table setting slides. I'll pause again for my partners to see if they'd like to add anything about local care teams. Great. I will stop sharing. Turn it back to you, Liz.
All right, thanks, Nancy. I appreciate the overview of local management board so everybody can understand the structure you all have in place. But then again, as you each said, in each jurisdiction, it may look a little bit different. Some are part of local government, some are nonprofits. They vary in size and services. So the next question is just, since we are focused on the juvenile justice system and youth involved in that system, just each of you to answer what role do you play in your community around youth involved in the juvenile justice system? And then are there key needs you're seeing in your community around these young people? So Renee, I don't know if you want to start. And
well,
then we
I just
can...
wanted to say Leisha did join us. So if
hi, Leisha.
A minute to introduce herself.
Thanks, Renee, and good morning, everyone. I apologize. We were working with a family this morning already, so duty always calls. But my name is Leisha Chandler. I am actually the Division Director of Division of Family Services within Frederick County Government. Also, I'm kind of serving double duty because I was just promoted into my position, but I'm acting also Deputy Director of the division as well as Local Management Board Director, overseeing our LCT and Local Management Board here in Frederick County. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on the promotion. I'm sure Frederick County will benefit greatly from you in all your roles.
Thank you so much.
All right. So Renee, do you want to talk about justice-involved youth in your community?
I think probably Pam or Nancy has, or Alicia. I don't have anything more than, because we're such a small jurisdiction.
Right. No,
We don't
that's
have
fine.
any specific programs that
Okay.
we are involved in, but we are always at the table. So I'm just going to
I think that's the point, Renee. There's
Yeah,
there's a
exactly.
role of the local management board itself, which we are not. We are staff to our local management boards. The board itself contains the various department heads who manage children and family services in each county, and the Department of Juvenile Services director, although regional, usually shows up at our board meetings. So the Department of Juvenile Services is always represented and is always part of the work at the county level. The other group that I'm sure we all serve in, but I've served on for 15 years, is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council in our county. That's the place where all of those who are part of criminal justice get together, including those who are part of juvenile justice. And that's another part of the conversation around what happens to young people in the juvenile services system. In Anne Arundel County, we're a very collaborative county. We've worked together closely on issues related to juvenile services for many, many years, not just around re-entry, although there is a real strength in our re-entry work at the moment, particularly for juveniles. We are starting to put aside houses where people who are re-entering from the criminal justice system can come in. But I think local management boards have always been at the other end of what's happening with kids. We really, when we can, want to be in a preventative model. And so we tend to work very tightly with our school system. Many of us have worked for years now on what used to be DMC, but is now called RED issues, the overrepresentation of African Americans in the juvenile system. We have had a committee both watching that and counting the numbers for probably 20 years now. I think it goes back to 2007. The gap has not changed either in juvenile services or frankly in the school system's disciplinary procedures. So we have been a part of that for many, many years. In our Anne Arundel County, at our local management board level, we're looking at the preventative issues. We're very interested in the interplay between mental health issues and the chances for children to become chronically absent and then eventually go into the juvenile services system, and that constant looking for programs that will prevent those issues. We have school-based community conferencing that actually reduces or ends suspension for young people. It's a promising practice that brings the community together to try and solve issues when juveniles have either come to the attention of the school system because of what they consider to be criminal behavior, or the police. In school-based conferencing, we're doing it inside the school system. In the outside community, we get referrals from the police. We've had that program for probably 14 years now. But we also worked with our mental health agency to create a mentoring program that is specifically for children who have been in the mental health system, and their entry is through their therapist. So when a therapist sees the need for a mentor because that child is at risk for any reason, then they will come into our program, our mental health mentoring program. We also have a Department of Juvenile Services mentoring program that's very homegrown. It's run by a member of our staff who is part of the neighborhood, understands where our young people fall into trouble, and takes referrals straight from the supervisors in the Department of Juvenile Services. That has been backed by our director for Juvenile Services, whose name is Delmonica, and is actually funded by the Department of Juvenile Services. I think it's one of the few that's a sort of homegrown program, but I will say to you that I think that sometimes where we excel as local management boards is that we know our communities, we know our neighborhoods, and we know who the kids respect in those neighborhoods. We have actually identified African American mentors in our neighborhoods that serve as our mentors for kids who have found themselves in the juvenile services system. Many of them have been in the system themselves. It's a really, really good program, and it was homegrown, and I think LMBs do very well at that. And then we have a peer navigator around the whole re-entry stuff. Often when kids come out of any system, but particularly juvenile services, they have a hard time getting back into the school system. There are a whole set of barriers to re-entry in a whole set of ways, not least that they have to go back to some of the neighborhoods that, you know, started problems for them in the first place. So our peer navigator is a formerly homeless young man. He's fantastic. I really do believe that it's important for our kids to see people who have been successful despite the barriers they have faced, and that can act as those sort of caring adults for our kids. So we really have tried very, very hard to understand both the disparities in the juvenile services system and the school system, to try to create programming that addresses those issues, but very, very much in a preventive mode. Because as obviously, probably as all of you know, we know that there are disparities even as kids enter the juvenile services system. We know that African Americans go down it, deep into it much faster than anybody else, than any other race or ethnicity. So that's a great concern for us here in Anne Arundel County. We've been focused on it a lot. As I say, our community conferencing program was chosen because it diverts disproportionately. We actually chose it for that reason. If you're going to have disproportionality, then you need programs that disproportionately divert. And over the many, many years, I think we're up to about 750 kids were diverted, and I think 600 and odd of them were African American. For some reason, community conferencing is one of those. I think it's culturally, it's community based, and it works really, really well. So that's probably way enough from me. Talked far too long, and so I will hand over to Alicia.
We appreciate your input. Thank you.
Well, I will say, I mean, this is why I always appreciate hearing from my colleagues with the LMB, because it's, you know, what they're doing is really kind of the blueprint, I feel like, in Anne Arundel County. While Frederick County, it's very, very much smaller than that at this point in time. I will say the most that we have had whenever it comes down to that connection, especially with our youth through DJS, is really whenever I was the LCT coordinator, you know, for our county, and that's how I first came into county government. It was really making sure that whenever there was a youth who had that touch point already, was really not only just looking at the child, but also looking at the family, because we're looking at, you know, wraparound services as a whole for that whole, for that whole family. So while the child that we may be receiving this referral and saying, hey, they're coming back into the community and they have a caseworker on this end of it, sometimes that connection is not fully there. And so, you know, while we know there is this requirement that they're connected to the schools, you know, we bring them to the LCT so that we can ensure that there is, you know, that full bridging of support, not just with, okay, let's get this kid back in school. Sometimes we know and we see that, you know, recidivism is going to happen pretty quickly if there is something that's not taken care of right in that section, where we're helping the family understand, okay, your child is coming back home. What are your particular needs, and what will make this work so that the child is feeling safe, they're feeling like they can thrive in this arena, as well as go back into our school systems if possible. So prevention has been our name of the game, and we really want to continue those relationships and understanding how we could be preventive of youth actually having that touch point and actually getting into the system. And again, as Pam mentioned, we know our children very well. You know, Frederick County, we're a pretty tight-knit community. Within my division, we have our Child Advocacy Center, so we already have built-in relationships with our police department, with all of our individuals. At our LMB meeting, we do have a representative from DJS who is present, but we also have great relationships currently with those case managers that are here in this area, so we can make sure that we're connecting in some way, shape, or form. We're very pivotal and we're very strong, I think, on the educational component, where we're ensuring that the child is having some stability in this area, whether that's extra tutoring through mentoring and having, a mentor that's here as well. So we utilize our services. We have various programs within our community that will connect, especially with youth who have had that touch point with the juvenile system as well. And I know, as I've shared, I'm a little bit more passionate about that because I come from an education background. My husband is also a teacher at JSEP as well. So, this is an area that we're very, cognizant of, is that the educational factor sometimes for these youth is a barrier, where some youth have not had education for many, many years. Now they're coming to us as system, and their educational plan may not be as strong as it needs to be. So while they're working in JSEP from this 30 day, 60 day, 90 day window, what does that equate to whenever a child gets out? We may not have a child who's ready for graduation or any type of readiness for career or anything like that. So what is it that we can do on the outside? So that's why our touch point is primarily with the parent and also with the child. But it's definitely important. And I have found that over the years, we have found a little bit of a decline after the juvenile justice reform law came into play, where we didn't have as strong of a relationship with our regional DJS representative. That's the area I would like to see that continue to pick up, so that we have that relationship, so we're connecting with these children a little bit faster. And so that's where we are in Frederick County. We definitely want to see a little bit more collaborative efforts whenever it comes to it. But our strength is in mentoring. Our strength is in connecting with the whole child, I believe.
All right. Thank you, Leisha. Nancy, do you want to talk about Talbot County and the juvenile justice system and the youth maybe you all see?
Yeah, so likewise to what Pam said, while we're smaller, our focus really has been on prevention. So our funding in the last 2 years gone to after school programs and home visitation. So really trying to meet that family early on from a preventative measure with evidence-based programming. Some years ago, we did do some funding around disconnected youth. We had what we called a career pathways program, which I have to say was not the success we hoped. We did have another component to that, what we call a re-engagement coordinator with the school system. So not justice involved youth per se, but these are young people who were not in school and weren't working, and getting them re-engaged with their education. So that position, which we jointly funded with our school system, really did help to dramatically improve the graduation rate. And a big part of that was what Pam alluded to with the racial and ethnic disparities, that really has been a driver for our work in Talbot County and across systems, but certainly with the juvenile justice system. So for us, giving capacity, our focus on that has been trying to build the ability of many of our partner agencies to do their work from a more racial equity informed lens. So not just those that are working directly with justice involved youth, but those across our system. We have an community-wide equity coalition. There's a variety of trainings that we offer every year. We offer some small grants to our partner agencies every year to allow them to bring in staff-wide training, technical assistance, coaching, and mentoring for themselves, so they can look at their policies, how they run their programs, and really understand what it means to be an anti-racist organization.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one other thing I would say, Pam brought up the important point that I didn't include in the slides of who sits on our board of directors. So it is the heads of all the main child and family serving agencies in every jurisdiction serve on the LMB board. That includes someone from DJS, the superintendent, the health officer, and then generally the other half of our board is made up of other community partners or community representatives. So it's a unique voices to have around the table. I will say for us in Talbot County, we've had a lot of changing in the staff in our DJS office in the last few years, just with some reorganization at the department. So we haven't had the same consistency there, not from lack of intent on the staff, just, administrative level changes.
Okay, thanks. Nancy, Renee, is there anything else you want to add from before, or no?
No, just that we may not have direct services or programs that we fund. We're at the table for a lot of the programs to ensure that agencies are not working in silos, and that we have a lot of collaboration between all the agencies that are involved. We just don't have the funding as a small jurisdiction. Our funding's so limited, but we are searching for other grants to be able to provide some direct services or grants to programs and services that are working or need to be brought to the area, because we identify gaps in services as well as part of the local management board.
Right. Thank you. And that's, it's one of the reasons I think Suki really worked hard to get a variety of local management boards on, because you all are so different. You do have different capacity, but you all do similar things like the coordination. So we appreciate that you're aware of what's going on in the community, even if you're not able to directly provide as many services as other jurisdictions. And that leads perfectly into our next set of questions. And many of you brought up like disproportionality as a key focus. Of youth of color that are going into systems. Are there other gaps that you see in your community? And then also just how are you using the Enough Act in your communities around these youth that may be justice involved? So I don't know who would like to start.
Well, Glory, that's a big question.
That's a loaded question.
It is a big question. Yeah.
Let me. Yes. Okay. So let's start with Enough. So we have 5 census tracts in Anne Arundel County that meet the Enough guidelines. We have a tract to ourselves as the local management board in an area called Brooklyn Park. We have another official tract in Annapolis in an area called Bay Ridge Gardens. But we also have 4 others that we, the local management board, actually gave seed funding to so that they could get going, even though they weren't an official Enough track. And why is that important? Because it really does what I think is probably the most important work of any work, which is to bring the various stakeholders to the table, along with residents, to really try and struggle with these issues. And that's what's important about the Enough initiative. It's who comes to the table. And I think that how that impacts young people, well, let me just use Brooklyn Park as an example. We finally have real residents at our table, anybody from a marvelous woman from a historically Black community to a union rep to everybody else. Brooklyn Park is a very diverse neighborhood. We went out and we have actually talked to over 1,000 people in Brooklyn Park about what they see as important issues for youth and families. And all we hear, honestly, from everybody, and it doesn't matter where, is there's not enough for young people to do. There's not enough after-school programs. There is very little career path that is non-traditional. That kids drop out, they have nothing, they end up in fast food. It's not a living wage, and so we perpetuate what is happening in our neighborhoods. So we have just applied for our another grant with Enough that will actually create a whole set of services for young people, including mentoring, tutoring, some homegrown, some evidence-based, but also an entrepreneurial program, because so many of our young people now do not want to be in the traditional marketplace and want to be doing things like social media and everything else. So creating programs that not only trains them to do that, but then gives them a pot of money at the end of it as seed money for them to start their programming. So that's just one piece of the work that we're doing in Enough. But if you focus on child poverty, which is what the governor has done, you automatically start looking at, okay, well, what we're talking about is also economic mobility, right? So if we look at it in 3 concentric circles, we're looking at the child and how the child can be successful. I strongly believe that no child can be successful if their family is not successful. And then we have to look at the neighborhood. So it's not just what the family is, but where the family is in the county. And that's why Enough is important. Also, because it is a place-based initiative that recognizes that depending on where you live will depend on what your success is, up to including how long you will live. So I think that's the exciting part about Enough. And I think in terms of juvenile services, it really is a preventive piece, because it goes right back to what's happening with prenatal care, what's happening with low birth weight. How do we start fixing those things so that our young people, all of them, go to school ready to learn. So all of that is involved in enough. So there's that. So that's my enough answer. What was the other piece of it, Liz?
No, you answered everything. So thank you. I was asking about the gaps, and you talked about the gaps and then relayed that to enough act. So
okay, so I think we went to Nancy or Renee next.
Well, we had chatted a little bit before this as a team, and I'll just share with you some of the gaps that we identified that seem to be common across our jurisdictions. I already mentioned that just system-wide with our local care teams, and we're hearing this from other partners about seeing substantive issues come up for kids earlier at a younger age, and that these challenges are more complex. Also, a continued focus on prevention and needing that system-wide so that we understand when children become justice involved, working backwards to how they got there. So that, to Pam's point, being able to make those systemic changes, and we're not just continuing to rinse, repeat.
Yes.
We also are noticing sometimes some barriers in our systems for youth who are justice involved to getting services, especially when their needs are more complex. So they may have exhibited certain behaviors, gotten to a certain level in the system that makes them ineligible for some of the services that they need. And some of that, I would say, in our jurisdiction, in some cases, is partly just a workforce issue, that these agencies are, many of our mental health, behavioral health providers are understaffed. They constantly have openings. Sometimes their staff is young and needs ongoing training. And so just their ability to manage and work with families with these complex challenges can be limited. Also, needing to really see the implementation of warm handoffs when young people are leaving out of home placement, a residential placement, whether that be DJS or other parts of the system, and coming back to their community, and making sure that whatever that return plan is really based on what's in the local community and not just some generic idea about what the young person needs. That was number 3. And number 4, while youth are in facilities, concerns about them receiving the scope of support and services that they need while they're there, which again, some of that we recognize is staffing issues at those facilities, and not necessarily having enough people or expertise to offer everything from education, behavioral health, mental health, et cetera.
Thank you. All right, Leisha or Renee, anything you all want to add to those?
I'll just add, as an enough community, we are a track 2 applicant here in Frederick County as well. And while Pam hit on a lot of it, economic mobility was the area I was going to really drill down into, especially that we're focusing on. Our Golden Mile area, we have one area in Frederick County. It's known as the Golden Mile. So it's Route 40. It's a richly diverse population. It is a high immigrant population as well here. So our community convenings that we have hosted have been outstanding and really sharing and understanding the root causes of problems. And our youth had a great voice in this, particularly around the mental health arena. But also there were other things that really stood out to me. And besides, the economic ability of the family and having stability in jobs, we go straight back to Maslow's hierarchy of need, and it's basic necessities. If you still have youth that are out here who are stealing, and it's food. Our food scarcity is a big component of this, and it's an area that we are addressing, within the Enough initiative, and making sure that they have, not only do they have the availability of food, and that our youth are able to get this through school avenues or any other arena that's accessible in the community, but it's also nutritious. It's not the, corner store, packages of food. It's not, agencies. Well, I won't name agencies who are, very well-meaning that bring out packaging of food in schools, but it's not nutritious. Most importantly, what we're hearing is that food needs to be, culturally relevant to them. So, that is something that we are really drilling down into, understanding those needs. When you have a middle schooler or a high schooler, again, they're stealing the food because they see their family does not have enough of what they need in order to thrive. And so that is something that's huge for us. And so we're working in that arena to really look at the availability of nutritious food being available to them at any given time. We have great partners that are here, Farm to School, that comes out to our schools that are doing drops, not only in the schools that are in our Golden Mile area, but also those school feeders. So they're getting a good, robust amount of that, and that it's also culturally relevant. And then also teaching these children about food and where it comes from, and also having that there's interest, you know, in looking at that, because children don't want to have to go through that cycle if they do become more stable after, you know, being involved in any system whatsoever. How do I make a career out of the things that I'm learning out of this? You know, and something as simple as food, we have found a lot of our youth who came to our meetings express this, you know, this idea of, I want to go into, you know, being a chef, or, you know, going into the culinary arts, because they want to ensure that they can grab whatever's available that they find, and they're able to cook that for their families and their extended families. So these are things that are very important for our population, especially, like I said, it's such a rich and diverse group. So we really even have to go to the straight basics of Maslow's needs in order to make sure that these children are able to thrive. And that, again, that prevention piece, that they're not getting into the justice system, we can save them from getting there by tackling those major needs.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Renee, anything you wanted to add?
Just about the Enough Act, each jurisdiction has capacity building dollars that we use for our county-wide, but not every jurisdiction has track 1, 2, or 3, which is not called that anymore. In Allegheny County, we're still in track 1 for the 2 census tracts that we have, and the LMB is not the quarterback. However, we're the project lead. And one of the things that we're seeing is we're really having trouble engaging the community because of the distrust that they have in the systems. The systems, it seems like they're always promised a lot and nothing ever comes to fruition. So we're really struggling getting our community and our youth in particular involved in activities. Even with the highest incentives we can possibly provide, there's still very limited participation. So that's what we're struggling with. And keep in mind that we don't see, in Allegheny County, we're very homogeneously white. We only have a population in the county of 8% African American, and less than 1% in any other ethnicity or race. So we don't see a lot of the disparities that some of the other counties do, because we just don't have it. But what we do see is the distrust and the we're not connected with our communities because they do not trust the systems at all. It seems like so many systems within the systems of care that they've been involved with have done them wrong in some way, shape, or form, and it really perpetuates what they're going through.
Thank you. I think that's also an important perspective in terms of how people trust the systems, and goes back to what Pam was saying about how do you get key people in their own communities who can connect with them and help them get involved in the program. So following that, in terms of all the disparities you all have talked about, whether it's disproportionality based on race, economic means, trust of systems, how could state level policies or funding, from your perspective, be better aligned to address these disparities? So what support could you all imagine from the state, whether it's either legislatively or funding wise, to help address these gaps that you're seeing?
So I think that when local management boards were set up in the 1990s as part of systems reform, we've actually survived for almost 40 years now. And there was a clear understanding at that time that state knows state, but local knows local. And I think local legislators understand that. I see Delegate Bartlett here this morning. Good morning. One of our hardest working delegates. Always wonderful to see you, Delegate Bartlett. I'm really happy. I'm always happy when I see your face. But I think that at the local level, and we are great examples of this, it looks different depending on where you're sitting. So if you're in Baltimore City, you're looking at a whole set of different gaps, a different set of personalities, a different set of neighborhoods than you'll ever see just in Anne Arundel County. Over the way, we have a variety from rural poverty that looks like the Eastern Shore to the piece of Brooklyn Park that looks more like Baltimore, and then everything in between. And I think that locals understand that. They understand what they have, but not only that, the relationships that get built at the local level really make things work. And that's what local management boards were based on. That understanding that at the end of the day, what makes change is people knowing one another and trusting one another and building collaborations in systems that are so completely isolated from one another. You absolutely have to have people at the local level who are making it work, whether that's the local care team, when you have supervisors and line workers from all of the different agencies who work with one another and in partnership with families. That works beautifully. Works beautifully because what you're doing is building up trust and relationships across systems. At the local management board level, you've got all the department heads talking to one another, talking to residents, planning together, listening to one another. So that sort of notion of local, I think when we lose that, when we start creating new things, the Department of Juvenile Services did a whole set of weird stuff with their regional directors and almost sort of created this second layer of people who then started to be at tables and nobody understood. And we lost the relationship that we had had. I mean, prior to Delmonica, it was Doug Muller, who had been around for 40 years, knew everybody. That's when it works. When your regional director knows their counties and can say, hey, Pam, we're having trouble in this area. What can we put together? Do you want to write a grant? Who's got money? That's when it works really well. So I always try to say to statewide entities, if you want to operationalize your stuff, talk to the local people first. What the state tends to do is, with all of good intent, come up with yet another program without talking to locals about how that's going to work. And the truth is, it's not going to work the same in Allegheny County.
Right.
And you're going to have to rely on Renee to make that fix in Allegheny County. So that's it. The bottom line is you're serving real children and families, right? Who live in relationships, who live in neighborhoods, who know people. I always say in Arundel County, 600,000 people who know one another. And that's how we like it. And that's how it should be. And the state somehow has to recognize that and force money down to the local level. Because when it stays at the state level, it becomes mired in bureaucracy. Go ahead.
Right. So I was just going to ask, so if I'm understanding you correctly, so part of the funding part might be that the state would allocate to the local management boards funding that they get to decide what would be best for their community. The Enough Act focuses on something very particular, says what census tracts you have to do, but then maybe there should be a pot of money that locals get to really drive, which is, I think, used to happen back when local management boards were first created, right? That you all created your own individual plan for your jurisdiction, and then you justified how that funding went to the different jurisdictions based on that plan. So is that kind of what I'm hearing, that a piece of the funding could be beyond maybe specific goals of the governor's office for children or the governor, just also a pot of money where local jurisdictions could really know their communities and dive into those issues.
And that was the whole point. That's why local management boards were set up.
Yeah.
And remember, we are just the staff. The local management board are all the people who are in the local management board.
Yeah. All right. Nancy, Renee, or Alicia, anything you want to add to what Pam?
Add, this isn't so much like an answer, but more of an observation maybe. Most of my background is in running community-based nonprofit organizations. So this is my first job formally within government. And there's just an inherent tension for undertaking the kind of disruptive, and I mean that in a good way, work, say, of the Enough Act. Like the Enough Act is really intended to disrupt systems and change the way that we do work together. And there is an inherent tension between trying to do that work within government, which has changing elected officials, and funding cycles that really don't encourage generative thinking. Like when I ran a nonprofit, I could do very entrepreneurial things. I could take some risk with the support of my board of directors. I wasn't on my own, but this world where we live in, where you have this pot of funds and it has to be spent by June 30th, and heavens don't send us any back, and you have to go through these administrative processes to make any budget change. That is, I'm a list maker, so I do okay with those kind of rules, but it's not a way of doing business that really encourages systems disruption. And it is not an easy way of do business when you want to get community members really involved in it. It's
Thank
just
you.
inherent tension.
Yeah, programs like the Enough Initiative were intended to, just as you said, it's really doing governance differently. And we are now in a spotlight, especially with the Enough Initiative and where we are politically right now, where the rubber will meet the road. When we get down to, some of us where we're at that point where potentially, we're creating and implementing a neighborhood action plan per se, as an example, we've done these community convenings, we've got the community voice, we have it. And then we look at data, and as systems and as agencies, we have this tendency to be, really much holding our guard up and saying, well, I know the community is saying this, but that's not what my data shows. And that's a problem. And at that point in time, this is where the rubber meets the road. And are we going to abide by what it is that the community is saying that they need? Or are we going to go back to our business as usual mindset and continue to look at our bottom line or look at our funding pots that we have? I definitely agree, with Nancy. You said it perfectly. You really summed it up perfectly. And what some of this year has really encapsulated with deadlines and pots of money moving from one direction to another, it really puts us as LMBs in the spotlight, and we are known as those community conveners, that the onus is going to be on us to ensure that the community voice is actually being heard, and that we are driving that, and that community voice is driving the final outcomes to whatever initiatives that we do lift up. And that is our intention. That's always been our intentions as LMB. I find that this Enough Initiative has been very unique in so many different ways. And, being only, my background is also nonprofit, as prior to that was also being in education. So I've seen all of these systems and how they work and how they play out. In those moments, I feel like I'm optimistic for our youth and what's to come and for our families. Sometimes I really get a little nervous when it comes down to the dollar portion of it. And so, it is our responsibility. We're kind of the holders, and, the agencies that are working with us, including DJS, it's our responsibilities to do governance differently, because it's in the best interest of our families, and it's in the best interest of these children who may or may not have that touch point in the future with us.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Renee. Anything to add?
No, I agree with everything. It really is. It's frustrating when you're trying to do the work locally and another agency says, well, my funding requirements are X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to look at it differently. They just are having a hard time changing their systems to meet the needs of the community. And that's why things are not working. And there's they have to change. Things have to change in order for progress.
And if you think about it, DJS should be figuring out how to put themselves out of business. That should be their major aim, should be to not be DJS. Because if we were doing this right and we created a preventive model, I'm telling you, the return on investment for that would be staggering.
Yes.
The amount we would save on the prevention level, and actually one of the things we're doing in Anne Arundel County, we're working with a design project with the Federal Reserve to prove the ROI.
And I think it's going to be amazing. And we are going to prove it, because the cost of deep end care, whether it's the probation system or the residential system, is outrageous in comparison with what we can spend in areas like early mental health and so on, forever and ever onwards. Way, 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 way cheaper. So that's my charge to DJS. Put yourself out of business.
There you go. We would all, I think this work group would support that it'd be a transformed system that is really working to put themselves out of business. That's what I say about therapy too. My job is to put myself out of business. And so I just want to open it up. We have about 4 minutes left. If there's any questions from the work group, if people have a question they want to ask of this wonderful panel. Feel free just to jump in. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Again, I apologize for not having my camera on, but well, it's just one of those mornings. So working, but not visible just yet. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming out and speaking with us. I hear you. I understand what you're saying. And I do believe that the best, while, we have to have our state level, obviously, the state has the most funding available. But I also think that I agree, we need to listen to our local communities. Anne Arundel County, and that's what I can speak to because that's my county, but there are often a lot of local grants that are available through the county. And and they just kind of pop up half the time. I don't even know. The only reason why I know that they exist is because I'm working on my newsletter and I'll get something and I'm looking at everything to put in my newsletter and then I'll know about it. And then there's a deadline probably about 2 weeks away. So what I'm getting at is I'm sure that all counties, all jurisdictions have, grant money. I just want to make sure that when grant money is available, no matter how large or small, that it gets to some of the nonprofits that are offering services, because there's a lot of times money available and folks just don't even know. And when I say money, I don't mean to make it sound so vulgar to say money available. What I mean is money for services, money for food, money for opportunity, money for programs. That's the entire sentence. But I just think that a lot of times the locals, they don't know that these programs are available, or they think that the grant is going to be, they're intimidated by the grant. Like they think it's going to be this huge process. And I have to tell you, some of them, the grants are not that difficult to prepare. But I would lean on, even if they say it's difficult, because, some grants are difficult, especially on the federal level, you all know. But I would lean on your elected officials as well to get their help with preparing the grant. I don't see a problem with saying, you know what, I want to get this grant. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to fill out this form. I'm not speaking to you all, obviously, but I'm talking about the folks that you all work with. And I think that would be great. I mean, there are certain permits and things that I've been working on for an event that we're having in October. And I went to my local county councilwoman because I didn't know how to fill out the permits. And she said, you know what? I don't know how to fill them out either, but let's figure it out. And she said that she gets calls sometimes for filling out the permits or filling out the grants. And she had never filled it out herself. So you get to learn the nuances with it. So anyway, I just wanted to recommend kind of digging in with, local county elected officials and get them to see the process that people have to go through in order to get the funding that they need. And that helps us, quite frankly, us, meaning all of us elected officials, perhaps do a little bit more streamlining on the process, because now we're frustrated because we had to go through all those various steps. So that's my little tidbit for today. And again, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Delegate Bartlett. That's helpful, I think. And I see that Nancy and Leisha want to make a comment. I know some folks may have to jump off. Thank you for attending today. Thank you for those who might want to stick around for a few more minutes. And so, Nancy, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Just two observations to offer in response. One, in our jurisdiction, we have replicated an idea that other local management boards have in place, which is we hold quarterly interagency meetings. So to help support the frontline workers, especially among those small community partners who are staff limited, sometimes all volunteer run. So to make sure that we're all aware of the programs and services that are available, how we make referrals. And then part of that can be sharing funding opportunities. I think you also point to education that we need to do among our funders. We have a discussion in our local management board when we put out RFPs, being conscious that we don't just want to fund a good grant writer. Really looking at the project and the intent and the alignment, and understanding that funding some projects means more technical support on our end. And as a small organization, that is something that we really have to commit to.
Thank you. Leisha?
And I think my piggyback is right onto that as well. We noticed this has been a significant year in which our nonprofits in this area, and especially in our Enough arena, those particular areas, well, there's a lot of funding in Frederick County, and there's always announcements and there's always technical support on this area. But one of the things that we noticed this year, particularly just because of where we're at this point, over 30% of those agencies have lost their grant managers or significant staff members due to where we are right now. One particular agency who is very well known for receiving all types of grants, they really had to diversify quickly because over 90% of theirs were actually federally funded grants and they weren't going for the local ones. So they learned to diversify pretty quickly in order to stay afloat, but they did lose a lot of staff members during that time frame. Our office here in the Division of Family Services, we are the key supporters of our county with our CPG grant that comes out. And so, you know, we have looked at the systems and how that plays into it, because a lot of these nonprofits don't have the capacity, they don't have the systems to really equate to, okay, I can get this grant in the right way, or my reporting and my invoicing, all the technicalities in the contracts can be so robust for these nonprofits that are really struggling right now. So this is that year to really right the wrong and make sure that we're assessing our systems so that we can be a better partner ourselves to these nonprofits. So thank you so much for saying that, Delegate Bartlett.
Yeah. So I want to thank all of our panel, Nancy and Renee, Pam and Leisha, for your insights and all your information. I think we could talk to you for 8 hours and have plenty to talk about and learn from you all. Suki, I don't know if there's anything you want to say. And thank you to Aaron, my co-chair. And Suki, anything you want to add?
Oh, no, I think this has been great. Thank you again to all of the LMBs represented here today. And no, we will meet again next month, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.